Welcome back to our channel today. Today we're going to be talking about something we considered, but have you guys ever considered maybe a tiny house? What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of maybe downsizing really big and going from a 3 bedroom to 2 bath, 1,600 square feet home down to a tiny house?
And tiny houses are all the rage right now. And
Mm-hmm.
I, for one, love to watch the TV shows about the tiny
Yes.
houses. We went on a tour one time where they had a bunch of tiny houses and we got to see them. I just think they're
Yes.
so cute. I just love them. But let me tell you, there's advantages
Yes.
and there's disadvantages. So we wanted to talk about that a little bit
Yeah.
today. The first thing you need to know about a tiny house is they're really tiny.
They are.
And if you're used to having your space and then you go into this enclosed area, and I don't know, if it was just Keith and I, maybe we could do
Yeah.
it, but I mean there's three of us, so we can't imagine
Yeah.
ourselves in a confined area like a tiny house because they are really tiny.
Yeah. You got to be thinking about all the possibilities, 99% of the time or 90% of the time, I guess. Yeah, we could probably handle a tiny house, but you have those days where there would be disagreements or whether you just need time alone. In a tiny house, you're never alone. I mean,
There's
you're
nowhere to be
you're
alone.
side by side. And if you're mad, tough luck. You got to stay there and suffer it out.
And especially bad weather days or
Oh,
whatever, you can't get out and about, you're stuck
yep,
in that little bitty confined space. And I can see it creating a lot of
yep,
problems. Another thing to consider is that finding a spot to build it might be tricky because every place has planning and zoning, they have rules and regulations. A lot of them don't support tiny
yeah,
homes. A lot of banks won't lend for a tiny house because most tiny houses are meant to be mobile, to move them from place to place. So a lot of banks, they don't want any part of it. So, I mean, those are some things that you
yeah.
need to consider when you're thinking about doing a tiny house.
Especially if you happen to live in an area where you get a lot of tornadoes, high winds, and stuff. A tiny house, unless you have it really structurally sound and really maybe concreted in where it's not movable. I mean, those things are small, and any kind of a windstorm, you could be shaking and rattling.
I'd have to have a basement in my tiny house.
Definitely.
Another thing to consider is going tiny is a huge transition. I mean, what are you going to do with all your
Yeah.
stuff? You got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just, they can't do that. Um, for one, I would miss my kitchen because most of the kitchens in a tiny home are tiny. They're not a full size kitchen.
No.
And I love to cook. We love to have family dinners. That would be very difficult to do
Yeah.
in a tiny home.
We used to, and we still do, watch reruns of the Tiny Home on HETV, whatever. And I remember he would bring them like 10 storage containers, real like you have for Christmas,
Like totes.
like totes or
Yeah.
whatever, and say, stack these up as much as you can because that's what you're going to put in your tiny house. And
Each
that's
person had
each
so many of
person.
those, and that's
Yeah.
all you could take.
Yeah. Man, we'd have to downsize a whole lot.
And another thing to think about is you think, oh, I'm going to live in a tiny home. I'm not going to have any housework.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have any maintenance. You still have maintenance tasks with a tiny home. There's still things that you have to do to maintain the home, to maintain your yard. I mean, you're not just going to move in and not have any. Now, it will be less than you have with a big house, but you have to know there still will be certain maintenance things you have to do
Yeah.
in a tiny home.
Plus, if you got to consider if you have pets, in a tiny home, it's hard enough just with two people. If you have, say, one pet or two pets, and especially inside pets, which most people do, it is really going to be crowded at times.
And it's the same way with an RV.
Yeah.
People who sell their home, get an RV, and travel, that's their home. I mean, it's a tiny home. And
Yep.
You know, it might be fun for a while, but I think
Yeah.
the newness would
Yeah.
wear off.
If you have a tiny home or if you live in an RV, let us know, the pros and cons that you're having. If you really enjoy it, tell us all the advantages, and if there, I'm sure there's some disadvantages, tell us, some of your disadvantages or things that people can learn from.
And I, for one, like if we had a tiny home, I would have to have a bedroom where I could stand up. Like I don't want to have to sit on my bed to get dressed
Climb
or
up into a bunker.
climb up into, yeah, no, that's,
My knees are bad enough already. I can't imagine having to climb in the middle of the night, go to the bathroom, and missing that first ladder step.
woo.
My, well,
And I love tiny homes. I mean,
yeah, we love them.
I love to go look at them. I love to dream about, and I think it would be
Yeah.
neat to camp in one, to stay in one for, a vacation or whatever. But to live in one full time,
Yeah. Every time
no.
we every time we went and looked at one, we would say, "Oh, we could do this. We could look how neat this is. I think we could do this." Then reality kind of creeps in and says, "Well, we're going to have to kind of snuggle in that way, and you have to go up the ladder this way." And when you go into the kitchen, we both can't go into the kitchen. They say, "Well, they are nice, but I guess it's not for us, I guess." So let's go ahead and let's go over some of the advantages that we have found out. People have told us, but we do know of a couple that's going into a tiny house. And so here are some of the advantages.
You have less cleaning.
Yes.
That's always a plus.
Big plus.
There's less maintenance because it's a smaller home. Your energy costs to heat it and cool it are significantly less than they would be in a larger home.
Yep. And if you owe anything on your house when you sell it, you can pay off your house and probably pay
Be
full
debt
price
free.
from for your tiny home, so you be debt free.
That's a great advantage.
Yes.
There's a whole lot less clutter because you don't have as much
Yeah.
stuff. You can connect to nature more because most of the tiny houses have big decks and stuff because that's more living space. It's outdoors to where you can enjoy nature
have
better.
more campfires and spend most of your evenings probably sitting outside and just enjoying nature.
And another advantage is if you had a tiny home that was mobile, you could move from place to place and go and experience different parts of the country. Now for some disadvantages.
Disadvantages, okay. Well, the first obvious one is going to be limited space. That's a big disadvantage, especially for as far as I'm concerned.
And it would be difficult to get privacy in a small home, especially if there's more than the two of you. If there's one person, you got all the privacy you need.
And there's only, I think I've seen one bathroom in tiny homes, so it's not much privacy no matter what you're doing.
And that's another disadvantage because when you're in this tiny space and you go into the bathroom, everybody's going to hear your business.
Yeah, it's like
it's not going to be private. They know what you're doing. They can hear it all. They're also difficult to move if you want to move them from place to place. I mean, it's difficult. And another thing to consider is they depreciate in value. Your home, your regular home, will appreciate over time. So they do depreciate in value, not exactly like a vehicle, but similar. Instead of appreciating, they will depreciate. So that's something that you need to consider as well. And then the budget for a tiny home, you could spend anywhere from $30,000 to way over $100,000. We've watched these shows and it's like they spent more on that tiny home than we did on our house. So there's just a lot of things to consider. Like I said, I love tiny homes and I think they're so cool and it's quite the rage now.
Yeah,
it's
the
quite
tiny
the
house
novelty.
craze is going on right now, and we were part of it. We were going to all the tiny homes conventions that they had and looking at them, just marveling at them.
But when it comes to where the rubber meets the road, I don't think we could live in one full time and still be sane.
Yeah, and still like each other. Maybe, in my case, maybe 50 years ago, it might have been a fun thing to do to try out. But at my age now, I need my space. I need the comforts of being able just to flop in the bed and stretch my legs and not worry about getting up in the middle of the night and trying to find my way around, stubbing my toes here or there. So,
and you give up full-size kitchens and bathrooms and We like our creature
Yeah.
comforts. We just do.
Like I said, for the younger people, I think it's probably a good thing to explore, and you can see if you're going to like it, and you still have time to adjust. But for at our age right now, we're set.
And if you're just one person,
Oh, that'd be
that would
perfect.
be, yeah, it'd be perfect. Even two people, you could
Yeah,
adjust, I'm sure. But like I said earlier, there's three of us. Our
yeah,
son lives with us, and you get two bedrooms, and then it ceases to be a tiny home
yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
So, it's just, we love them, but it's not for us.
yeah. I
So,
think if I was single and had a pet dog and loved to travel, that would be ideal. But in our situation now, like we said, we love tiny homes, and we'll probably go see many of them. But for us, we're going to stay in a home.
thanks so much for joining
Yes,
us today. If there's something that you would like for us to talk about in a coffee talk, let us know in the comments. We'll see you next time on Retired
and
and
loving
Loving
it.
It. If you would like to see more of our videos, click the video that just popped up on your screen